Hello, my name's Mr. Atherall. I'm going to be talking to you about Macbeth today. I've done 2 videos on Act 1. We're now in Act 2. I'm just going to talk about important moments in it, things you might say, and particularly just be highlighting really important quotes throughout it. So we're in Act 2 and Scene 1, and we left Act 1 with Macbeth being persuaded by Lady Macbeth to go and kill King Duncan. And Act 2 is where the murder happens. So we start Act 2 with Banquo up late at night. Remember, Banquo is suspicious of Macbeth and suspicious of the witch's prophecy. He thinks that they're going to be won to evil by the prophecies, and particularly suspicious of that might happen to Macbeth. So he's up and walking around the castle, and he's talking with his son Fleance. He says, "I would not sleep. Merciful powers restrain me in the cursed thoughts that nature gives. The memory of the witches is keeping him from sleep." And he's struggling to cope with that. And then suddenly Macbeth appears. So he sees Macbeth on his way to kill King Duncan. Obviously he doesn't know that's what he's doing for certain at this point, but that's part of the suspicion that he later feels. So they have a very brief chat, and then Macbeth's on his way again, delivering this soliloquy. Lots of soliloquies that are revealing the inner thoughts of Macbeth. He describes his brain as being heat oppressed. He is pressured. His brain is affected by the uncertainty, the nervousness, the guilt he's feeling about what he's doing, and he persuades himself to do it by remembering a story about a guy called Tarquin who committed rape, and he says, with Tarquin's ravishing strides, there's an aggression to go and grab and take what you want to take there. And Macbeth is persuading himself to become that violent taker of what you want. Obviously, becoming an evil man in the process. We don't see the killing of King Duncan. Act 2, Scene 2, we get Macbeth and Lady Macbeth talking about the fact that he's killed him. So that the death has happened in between those 2 scenes. And Macbeth comes back, and he's now, having killed King Duncan, struggling with the guilt of it. One of the ways he describes the fact that he can't handle the guilt of it is he says, "Amen stuck in my throat." So there was this belief that if you were possessed by a demon, you wouldn't be able to pray, and so he's trying to say amen, but it's stuck there. The killing of King Duncan has taken him away from God, has taken him away from goodness. He's now infected and possessed by a demon. Lady Macbeth is much calmer. She is systematic. She knows what she wants to do. Macbeth has made the mistake of carrying the daggers, carrying the murder weapon away from him, and she says, "Give me the daggers." She was going to go and put them back and make other people, the grooms, look guilty for it. She says to him, "I'm ashamed to wear a heart so white." That white heart, a metaphor for cowardice. She would be ashamed to be as cowardly as him. She says a little water cleanses us to do. We just need to wash ourselves. Whereas he's saying, "Will Neptune's ocean wash the blood clean from my hand?" Although water will literally clean his hands, he won't be free of the guilt. So he is plagued by this guilt. Now that changes as the play progresses. He stops feeling that guilt, but at this point he's plagued by the guilt, and Lady Macbeth is very much in control. We then go to Act 2, Scene 3. There's a knock at the door. Macduff is at the door. Macduff is coming to see the king. And the interesting thing that they talk about here as Macduff arrives, with Macduff is Lennox, and Lennox talked about the fact that there was a storm last night, in fact an earthquake last night. Now again, that is perhaps the witches and the storm and the violence, or perhaps it is God's voice angry at what Macbeth has done. Lennox says that the earth was feverous and did shake. So again, the earth is personified there, feverish and did shake. It is struggling to cope with the evil that is being happened upon it. Macduff goes to Duncan. Macduff finds Duncan murdered, returns. Oh, horror, horror, horror. Describes the murder as most sacrilegious. This is a sacred thing. To kill the king is to go against God. So he describes it as this. This is a terrible thing to do. Again, this religion that's always there in the background is existing here. Macbeth goes to witness it and pretends to be furious and kills the grooms because they look like the guilty ones, or he's pretending they look like the guilty ones, and if they're still alive then they could cast the blame onto him. And Macduff asks, "Wherefore did you do so?" And Macbeth responds with, "Who can be wise in a moment?" So, who can be wise? Although actually there's a little bit of wisdom here. This is Macbeth slightly changing. He's now got much more control. The guilt he was feeling, he's starting to master. He's becoming a more cold-hearted man at this point. Now Malcolm and Donalbain, they're nervous. They're nervous of two things. They're nervous, one, if their dad's been killed, then someone probably wants to become the king, and they're next in line. So they need to get out of the way, or their lives are in danger. And also, they're nervous that the blame might be cast upon them. So Malcolm and Donalbain, they decide to flee. Donalbain says, "There's daggers in men's smiles. We don't know who's innocent. We don't know who's guilty. Some people are smiling and pretending to be friendly towards us, but there's daggers in those smiles. They may kill us, even though they look like they're being friendly." Lady Macbeth comes in, and Lady Macbeth pretends to faint when she hears this news. Now that's an interesting thing in terms of her in public being feminine in a stereotypical way, in a way that might be expected of us, unable to cope with the idea that the king's been murdered. Yet obviously she can cope very well with this truth. So Act 2, Scene 4, short scene, conversation between Ross and Macduff. We've got the news that Malcolm and Donalbain are stolen away, and that makes Macduff a little bit suspicious of them. And Ross talks about the fact that the sovereignty will likely fall on Macbeth. Not a massively important scene, but kind of fills in some of the details, basically the fact that Macbeth is going to become king as a result. So that is Act 2.